All right, let's talk about everybody's favorite topic, and that's gear. And when I was getting ready to through hike, I spent many hours considering what I wanted to bring and how much everything weighed and why I wanted to bring it and blah, blah, blah. And overall, I did a pretty good job, but I did adjust along the way. And today I want to talk about some of my favorite pieces of gear. I just grabbed my backpack out for the first time since I got home, and it still smells like the trail, which is nice. I've said this in the past, but gear is extremely personal, and what works for me might not necessarily work for you. But I wanted to just highlight a couple pieces that I carried the entire way along the PCT that stood out for one reason or another. All right, first on the list is my handy dandy Six Moon Designs carbon fiber sun umbrella. Now, I carried this sun umbrella the entire way. Obviously, it was particularly useful in the desert and in Washington when it started to rain because it does double as a rain umbrella and it works just fine that way as well. And I did use it occasionally throughout the rest of the trail too. So maybe it didn't get used every single day, but when it did get used, I was extremely thankful to have it. There are some stretches in the desert where shade is nowhere to be found, and having a handy dandy umbrella to pop up was a total game changer. Also, when it is raining, which is not super likely until you get up north, obviously, but it did rain a few days in the desert, and then obviously in the Sierras you have some storms in the afternoon occasionally. But if it's just sprinkling, it's nice to have this where you can just pop it up and down as the rain comes and goes and not have to worry about putting on or taking off your rain gear constantly. And then a lot of times when I wasn't using it, but I thought I might need to, I would just shove it underneath my backpack strap, and it would just kind of sit here underneath my arm. So if it started raining again or rained harder, I could just easily pull it out, pop it up, and then when I was done, put it right back, good to go. All right, moving on. Next on the list is the Outdoor Research Echo Sun Hoodie. This was the second one that I wore. This is the emerald green, and I got it on their clearance website for way less than it usually is, but they are affordable to begin with. And like I said, this is the second one. The first one that I had actually was my own fault for ruining it. I set it on a heater to try and dry it out a little bit quicker, and it ended up burning it. So that was my fault. But this one I carried from Kennedy Meadows all the way to the end and throw it through the wash, and it looks brand new still. There's hardly any wear or tear. I was actually really surprised at how well it held up, considering how not necessarily sturdy it feels. But I didn't have any problems with tearing or wear or anything like that. So genuinely impressed with the quality and longevity of this super light sun hoodie. Another reason I really enjoyed this sun hoodie was because on days where it was particularly hot, especially in the Sierra where there was water sources aplenty, you could take this off, submerge it in the river, wring it out, and then put it back on damp or wet. And it did a really good job at helping regulate some of that body temperature, keeping you cool, especially as you're climbing out of those valleys or during the heat of the day. Does a good job wicking the sweat away, and if you even just take your backpack off and your back is all sweaty, if you just let it air out for 5 or 10 minutes, it'll dry out again and you'll be good to go. All right, moving right along. The next thing is going to be my Anker 20,000 milliamp hour battery pack. The reason I enjoyed this was because, for one, it has both a USB-C port, a USB-A port, and a USB-C cable that is attached to it, so you don't have to worry about losing your cable, or if you just need a short one, it's right on the end of this. And then the main feature that I really liked about this is the display. Probably won't show up on camera, but it gives you a percentage of the battery that's left, and that gave me a lot more peace of mind than the standard 4 light system that kind of just gives you an estimate of how much battery you have left. It was nice to know, okay, I have 3 or 4% battery, and then that way I could prioritize what I needed to charge, whether it was my phone or my Garmin or whatever. There are only a couple times that the 20,000 milliamp hour capacity, I was cutting it close. I mean, really just a couple of times, and that was probably my fault for not fully charging it in town or whatever it was. But in general, I would say 20,000 milliamp hours is probably a little bit overkill, depending on how much stuff you have to charge. It should be fine for the majority of people out there. All right, next on the list is probably my favorite piece of backpacking gear that I own, and that is my Outdoor Vitals Ventus hoodie. This is like an activewear kind of mid-layer. The shell is just a little bit water repellent, It's slightly insulated, but it has mesh in the armpits to help with cooling. There you go. Got mesh in the armpits to help with some of that heat regulation. I actually didn't carry this the entire time, but I wished that I had. I carried this from the border to Kennedy Meadows, and then when I went to the Sierra, I opted for a fleece and a little bit heavier down jacket combination. But in retrospect, I really think I could have got away with just this and a rain jacket over top of it. This was great for both hiking and for sleeping. It's comfortable to wear directly on the skin, which is super nice. A lot of times I would wear it to bed, and then when I would wake up, if it was cold out, I could just start hiking immediately without having to change. And then once the sun came up or I got hot or whatever, I would just take this off, jam it in the outside of my backpack, and throw my sun hoodie back on. The versatility of this jacket is what really stands out to me because you can wear it as a camp shirt, camp jacket. It does a great job cutting the wind. It keeps you warm even if you're not moving. But when you are moving, it also does a good job regulating that temperature and keeping you comfortable in a wide range of temperatures and conditions. So yeah, overall, like I said, one of my favorite pieces that I own. I still just wear this daily. Definitely recommend, definitely wish that I had carried it the entire way. All right, next item on the list is going to be two things, and that is my sleep system. So that includes my Enlightened Equipment Revelation 20 degree quilt, as well as the Thermarest NeoAir X Therm. So starting with the quilt, I feel like this is one of the more popular models along the trail. I did see quite a lot of them, and probably for good reason because it's really nice. And a 20 degree quilt about covers all the bases that you will need. Specifically for the PCT, there were a couple nights that got into the teens, but again, when paired with something as warm as the X Therm, not a huge deal, especially if you're wearing clothes underneath as well. So this pad, this is actually the NXT model, the updated model of the X Therm. I started with the original one, and right before I got to trail days at Cascade Locks, I started having an issue with the valve leaking, but it would only leak sometimes. So some nights I would wake up and my pad was flat, and other nights it would be totally fine. And Thermarest actually ended up just giving me this for free. I mean, they took the other one obviously, but they just replaced it at no cost to me, which is awesome. And I know that Thermarest has a good customer service reputation. So if you do have a problem with your Thermarest on the trail, they're pretty good about sending you a replacement. It might be inconvenient for a week or two while they ship it to you, but in general, you can count on them to replace that. Now, I was cowboy camping almost the entire time, except in the Sierra with the mosquitoes or when it was raining. And I did have this Tyvek ground sheet underneath. But besides that, I wasn't particularly careful about my inflatable pad. I wasn't, super careless about it either. I think I treated it about how Thermarest expects you to treat it, and I had no issues with any punctures or anything like that. Again, just the valve, but they replaced it, no big deal. But yeah, in general, I was quite happy with the warmth to weight ratio of this and the durability of it. All right, next up is a small item, but one that makes a huge difference, and that is a good pair of earbuds. These are, I believe it's the Soundcore A20i, and they're made by Anker. I think Soundcore is like a sub-brand of Anker. And the reason that I really enjoyed these was primarily the battery life. They're USB-C, there's a USB-C port in the back, so again, using the Anker power bank, had no problem keeping them charged. I would listen to music or podcasts or books, I would say 70% of every day. And I could easily go 2 or 3 days without having to recharge these, especially if you're only listening with one ear at a time. So I would put one earbud in, listen to it, and then when it died, I would put it back, take out the other one, and they're constantly being charged. So going that way when you're using one at a time, you could easily get 2 or 3 days out of these without having to recharge them. The sound quality on these earbuds is also surprisingly good. Considering they're only $25, I mean, it would be hard for most people, I think, to differentiate between the quality of these and the quality of maybe an $80 or $90 pair of headphones. They definitely don't sound cheap. They don't sound like a pair you would get at a Five Below or something. They're going to be good enough for most people, I would say. And again, at $25, you're not worried about breaking them or losing them or whatever. It's cheap enough that it's not that big of a deal. but at the same time, the quality that comes at that price point is pretty impressive. Okay, and finally, I wasn't going to put this on this list, but I'm going to give this an honorable mention title, and that is my tent. So this is the Six Moon Designs Haven Bundle. The reason I wasn't going to put it on this list is because I didn't really use my tent that much, but it does get an honorable mention because when I did use it, I was really grateful to have it. It worked a treat, especially in the rain in Washington. I didn't have any leaks. Granted, I seam sealed this myself, but nothing came through the material. And then in the Sierra, when it was buggy and you couldn't be outside your tent for more than a couple of minutes without being eaten to death, it was nice to have that extra room. This is a two-person tent. When those bugs are out and you just want to live in your tent, it's nice to have a bit of extra room inside of your net tent so that you can hang out. Another really great feature about this tent is having it in two pieces, the tarp and the net tent separate. Gives you a bit more versatility. So when it was raining, a lot of times I would just set up the tarp, and that way I would have a bit more room inside. I would just throw my Tyvek down and put my sleep stuff on top of that. Or if it was nice outside and maybe there were just some mosquitoes or bugs or whatever, you could just set up the net and then still be able to enjoy the night sky, but not worry about creepy crawlies or bugs or whatever it may be. Once you get the hang of setting it up, it really only takes a minute or two. You just leave all the guy outs at the same point, set your trekking poles to the right height, stake it out, pop it up, good to go. And no matter what tent you carry, that's going to be the case. But I did find that this is particularly easy to set up for me, especially now. So these are my favorite pieces of gear that I carried. But again, I've said it 100 times and I'll say it again right now. Gear is super personal and you should carry whatever it is that you think is going to make your hike the best. Don't get caught up in counting ounces or worrying about having the lowest base weight out there. It's really not that big of a deal. As long as your pack is a reasonable weight, you carry what it is that you think is going to be best. And if you need to make changes along the way, not a huge deal. It's part of the journey. You'll figure it out as you go. So I appreciate you guys watching. Leave a comment down below what your favorite gear is, or if there's anything that you're on the fence about bringing on your thru hike. Again, thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.